time, particularly in the early stages of her career and even before she was famous, there's a very uncomfortable clip of 10-year-old Britney appearing as a contestant on a TV talent show, and she's being grilled by the then 60-something host about whether or not she had a boyfriend. Let's have a listen to that.
I noticed last week you had the most adorable, pretty eyes. You have a boyfriend?
No, sir.
Why not?
They're mean.
Boyfriends? You mean all boys are mean? I'm not mean. How about me?
And from Baby One More Time onwards, there was this constant obsession in the media about whether or not the teenage Spears had breast implants. This was a question that she was repeatedly asked by older male interviewers. And as Britney's personal life made tabloid headlines, her treatment became more harsh, even in carefully managed interviews with veteran journalists. Diane Sawyer asked her what she'd done wrong to make Justin Timberlake dump her, while Matt Lauer accused her of being a bad mother. Both interviews ended in tears. Yeah, let's have a little bit of a listen to our chat with Matt.
It's not like Britney wrote a bad song, but it's Britney wearing a bad outfit. Is Britney in a bad marriage? Is Britney in a bad
That's America for you.
yeah, as a mother, that is
Red light camera ahead.
pretty close to home.
That's some intense questioning. We'll be back in a moment to discuss the real reason Britney doesn't perform in public anymore.
This episode of Common Room brought to you by Civic. If you're working from home or get a license right. Civic license. Like what you're doing, how to ride and up searches really license today.
Standing the focus Britney Spears documentary comes a new light on the singer's public final public appearance from 2018. What happened there? Britney was due to announce her next big Las Vegas residency, and the stage was set for a massive event streamed live around the world. After a lot of hype, Britney finally emerged on stage, and then she just left without saying a word. Walked straight into a waiting limo. Now, at the time, it seemed like really bizarre mismanagement. Why would you have the star of the show come out and not perform or not even speak? But the documentary suggests that Britney was actually meant to perform that night, but refused. So was this her finally taking back some power under this conservatorship? A few weeks later, the residency was cancelled, and Britney hasn't performed or really been seen in public since. It's reported that she won't do anything to her. She knows that her father is falling into conservatorship. Right, I guess this is her tactic to kind of pull back some power, I guess. So where to for Britney from here in a conservatorship? So this
very, very real challenge.
Leaks from hotel quarantine sparked Victoria's deadly second wave. But in recent weeks, leaks have occurred across the country, leading to lockdowns in Brisbane and Perth. Today, journalist for the Saturday paper, Rachel Withers, on the concerns experts are raising about Australia's quarantine system and whether our key frontline defence mechanism against the virus is working as well as it should. Rachel, Australia's international borders have been closed to the rest of the world for almost a year now, but every week a few thousand returning citizens are allowed to land back home. Can you tell me a bit about what that process is like for someone who is coming back to Australia right now?
Well, it's difficult. If you're one of the lucky ones who flight has managed to secure one that doesn't get cancelled, and you board a plane from wherever you're flying from, you land at an airport in Australia, probably Sydney, which is taking the most international arrivals at the moment. And at the airport, you're met by military and police, and after a bit of waiting around, you're escorted and bussed to your quarantine hotel. You don't know where you're going, but most of these hotels are CBD somewhere, and you're escorted right up to your room. And you stay in your room in the hotel for 2 weeks. You can't leave your room. Depending where you are, you can't open a window. And also, depending where you are, you're tested intermittently throughout your stay for COVID. They'll leave your meals outside your door, not walk away, so that they don't interact with you. And you do the same thing when you're done with your meal. You put it outside the door. You never interact with a person, ideally. And if at the end of the 2 weeks you test negative, you're allowed to leave. And that's the end of the process. But if you test positive, you stay until the virus is cleared. And it's a system that was set up way back in the early days of the pandemic, when a lot of the cases were coming from China and the US, and we didn't know anywhere near as much about the virus as we do now.
Okay, so can you take me back to when hotel quarantine was first established? Where did the idea come from and how was it put together?
So the hotel quarantine system was introduced in quite a rush last year. It was decided at a March 27 meeting of the National Cabinet.
States and territories will be quarantining all arrivals through our airports, in hotels and other accommodations.
Choose your fighter.
2 weeks.
And it was left to the state and territory governments to arrange the mechanisms, as well as how to enforce the requirements and what the rules would actually be.
This will be enforced by the state and territory governments. The Commonwealth will be supporting them with all manner of assistance which will relate to the work done by the Border Force.
Some relied more on police and military, others on private security, patrolling the hotels. Most of